If you ask a man to describe his perfect woman, this is what he's going to describe: an object, an ego booster, and a robot. She tells me I'm great, bragging rights. And notice how many of these things revolve around keeping you there against your will. Like they're willing to put in that kind of work, but they're not willing to put in the work that will make you want to stay in a relationship with them. Because it's not about that. It's about how much power they can exert any given day over a human being that they want to exert power over. And that.
Welcome back to the Public Offender 100 show. Everybody, thank you for joining me today. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Definitely help boost us in the algorithm and all that good jazz. But let's get into it. I came across this video almost about a week ago. But I came across this video and it's okay. You guys, a lot of people don't know this, but like a lot of these things that I hear being talked about in these spaces, as far as like deconstructing misogyny and bringing down the patriarchy and things of that nature. A lot of these things I have just inherently learned as a man, right? And it's so odd that the more I study this stuff and the deeper I get into this stuff, that it's not as deep as people. I think a lot of people think that it is or act like it is, right? And when I say that, I'm saying like for me. I'm not saying that for everybody else. I do think that for a lot of people, especially women, they have a hard time understanding the minds of men because women are not conditioned the same way men are, right? But as a man, when I see what men do and I examine my own behaviors, especially now just having the self-awareness, I clearly see why I've done and do the things that I do, the same way I clearly see why other men have done and do the things that they do, without a doubt. I say all of that because when I came across this video, I was like, these are the things that I talk about every single day in my lives, in my videos, in my real life, just the behaviors of men, right? And I've just always spoken from a place of like my own understanding, my own observation. But now I'm starting to do way more, like research, and I'm starting to see that the data actually is supporting everything that I believe about men. Like every single thing that I believe about men, there is a study already conducted on it, a really good study, a really good book, 10 books, whatever it is, that have already proven the thing that I just knew inherently. I just inherently knew as a man. So the reason why that's important to understand is two things. A, for me, though I was taught these things, men can unlearn them first and foremost, because I'm unlearning them. Secondly, it's not like there is the patriarchy is a real thing. It is you can taste it. You see what I'm saying? You breathe it, you eat it, you consume it. It is a real thing, both physical and mental. It is a real thing. And I'm so tired of having so many men try to gaslight me into thinking that I'm lying to myself, that I'm missing the point, I'm missing the plot, I'm just out here caping for these women, blah, 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 whatever. But day after day after day, and study after study after study, and book after book after book, and discussion after discussion after discussion, I am seeing more and more and more and more exactly why I am the way that I am. Also, exactly why men in general are the way that we are. It isn't a secret at this point. If you want to know, why you are the way that you are, just take 2 minutes and examine yourself. It's not really that difficult. You will see. I could close my eyes and I could trace back to my earliest memories of me watching shows like The Simpsons, watching All in the Family, watching Married with Children, listening to listening to music, whether it be rap or R&B or rock or whatever, that just always reinforce these patriarchal thoughts and processes, right? Talking to people, religion, like it's just all there. It's just all there for me, and I could see it laid out perfectly. But I have to want to see it, and that's the problem. Most men don't want. I just want to warn everybody, trigger warning before we start watching this video. She really goes into depth about abuse. She's talking about abuse a lot. And she's just talking about men in general, and a lot of this stuff I know will actually hit home for, it should hit home for every man, but it's probably going to hit home for every woman as well. So I just want to put that trigger warning out there.
This is an article describing the benefits of violence as they pertain to abusive men. The man who wrote this article is named Chuck Derry. This is basically why does he do that summarized. Not fully, not entirely, but the question, why does he do that, is answered in this article. So let's go through it and see what we can learn. So just like Lundy Bancroft, he also facilitated court-mandated groups for men who battered. In the early 1980s, we were concentrating on healthy relationship skills building, emotional identification and self-control, and anger management, among other related issues. The assumption was that these men just don't know any better. They don't have any healthy relationship building skills. They don't have, emotional identification or self-control, and they need to work on their anger management.
I've heard so many men make these excuses as to why they can't be good fathers, why they can't be good men, why they can't be good people. And they always blame it on like, oh, I didn't have a dad in the home, or like something to that effect. Like, how would I know how to raise a child? I never, my dad wasn't there. How would I know how to be a father? My father wasn't there. They always try to make some excuse for it. That, what she just said to me, is wrapped up, like that's wrapped up in there. You know what I mean? Like men making excuses as for our shortcomings and blaming it on like, I just don't know any better. We're gonna get into it though, but just remember that men are, a lot of men like to tell this lie that like, oh, I just didn't know any better because I didn't see a model of this in my life, or whatever the case may be. Setting aside that women somehow, some way figure out how to be decent human beings without having dads there a lot of times, same, because we grew up in the same homes. And mom having internalized misogyny or whatever the case may be, they still figured out how to be good, decent human beings. Neither here nor there, but let's keep going.
Or self-control, and they need to work on their anger management. Now, he said, on the other hand, the battered women in Duluth, Minnesota, began gathering to discuss the impact of violence on their lives. And what emerged from that was that men who beat them not only physically assaulted them, but there was also a lot of controlling behavior involved. So where they went, who they talked to, what they wore, where they worked, if they worked, how they spent money, etc. There was controlling of intimate behavior, the control of child rearing, controlling the domestic labor split, etc. The bottom
I've seen all of those things. I I don't want to excuse myself from any of these behaviors. I don't want to act like I've never done any of this stuff. These things that she's describing right now, I haven't done personally, but I've seen these things up close and personal from many men throughout my life. And talking to men about things like financial abuse, things like I know a few men that do this, right? I know the women, the women and the men, right, in these relationships, but the women will be out without the man, and the man will be just like constantly calling her, like not threatening her, not like saying that she's cheating or anything like that. They're just constantly calling her. When are you going to be home? What are you doing right now? Oh, I was thinking, like and the women will tell you that when they're at home with the men don't talk to them that much. They'll also tell you that when the man is out, the man never calls the woman. When the man is out, when the man is at work, when the man, disappears for 2 hours or whatever the case may be, he never calls her to have these conversations. But when she's out, now all of a sudden he wants to call her 50-11 times, right? These are manipulation tactics. Without a doubt, these are manipulation tactics. And I've seen it up close and personal many times.
line that these women were saying was that this man always gets his way, and violence is kind of like the bottom line that ensures women's compliance. And it kind of clicked for Chuck when he realized that, like, yeah, I am trying to cultivate skills in men that will allow them to assert themselves and express their feelings, because again, the prevalent line of thinking in our culture is that men are suffering, because they're so disconnected from their feelings and they don't know how to access their feelings. And if they did, they wouldn't be abusive, they would be loving, and that would solve everybody's problems. But what turned out actually happening is that he would send them home to practice these skills, and they would come back and say that the skills weren't working. And when they were asked why, they would say, well, because she still did this, this, and this, but not this, this, and this like I wanted. And it started clicking for Chuck that he was teaching them these skills that allow them to actually control women even more effectively.
Diabolical. They were using, and I've seen this a lot online too. Men are using psychology, right? And psychology terms like gaslighting and things of that nature, projection. They're using these words, A, out of context the majority of the time, and B, they're using them to try to gaslight the women. It's the why. I'm like, what? This is crazy. It's to give a man these tools is dangerous. It's that it really is. Some men go like, here's proof that therapy doesn't work for everybody, right? And here's why I'm very, like I've told you guys a million times, I don't, therapy isn't the cure for everybody, especially men. Therapy may not be the cure for your man. Therapy may not be the cure for that man or for this man or whatever the case may be, because if that man doesn't want to change, he'll just take what he's learned in therapy and use it to manipulate women even more and harm people even more.
So now he's thinking, okay, well, there must be a reason why they're doing that. He's asking the right questions. He's like, what is the benefit? He said, so what was the point? Why were they so invested in this controlling and abusive behavior? So he actually sat down and asked them. And he wants us to note that they first all looked at each other. I talk about this a lot. They all looked to each other and they said, what do you mean there are no benefits? He kept pressing. He said, well, there must be some benefits from the violence. So like, why would you do it otherwise? If it's not serving you and it's not serving anybody else, then why do you do it? When they finally started admitting that there are benefits and what the benefits are, they filled in an entire 4 by 8 foot blackboard with the benefits of their violence.
This is exactly what men do when you talk about the patriarchy, by the way, in general. First of all, the men looking at each other for validation happens all the time. Happens online too. They don't look at each other, but they say stuff. You know what I'm saying? They'll protect each other no matter what. But secondly, once you start to talk about the stuff with the men, they just they mask and they hide so much. You know what I'm saying? And them with the patriarchy, what they do is when you start talking about the patriarchy, they go, oh, the patriarchy doesn't benefit me. That's always their initial response, especially when you talk to minorities, or you talk to marginalized groups of men who belong to marginalized groups of people, Black men, Latino men, Asian men, so on and so forth. Especially when you talk to those men, they'll be like, or poor men, poor white men, whatever the case may be, they'll be like, "What, the patriarchy? I don't see any benefit in it." But they know, but they know what the benefit is. They know what it is. They also understand that once they admit that they know that it benefits them, then the jig is up. Then the jig is up.
Most important thing to keep in mind about this list is that these men used violence at the end of the day to get their way, and that's how they ended up in these groups. What I don't want you to think is that only abusive men think like this and that only abusive men want these benefits. There are lots of men out there, and women are trained to respond to this in a way that makes this very easily possible. But there are lots of men out there that can achieve these same benefits by using tactics other than violence.
All men are taught these tactics, by the way. All men. I'm not saying all men do them, but all men are taught these tactics by society. All men. All men. I rarely say all men, but I want to drive that point home. All men. Every single one.
Right? They use tactics like love bombing. They use tactics like psychological manipulation. They use tactics like peer pressure. So just because these men were using violence to reap these benefits, know that
they use tactics like triangulation. They use tactics like when you're in front of when you're in a group. This is the peer pressure part, which and triangulation. When you're in a group, you can be hanging out with another couple or few couples or whatever, and they will constantly be comparing their spouse or their significant other to your spouse or to somebody else's spouse all the time. That is triangulation. That is also peer pressure, without a doubt.
This is just a list of what most men are looking for. They may not use violence to get that from you, but this is just a really good look inside of what the patriarchy teaches men on like a large scale. all men are tempted towards at least one of these benefits. All men are tempted to use some form of violence or manipulation in order to achieve these benefits from you as a woman. And they will gaslight, they will scream, they will yell, they will punch holes in walls, they will emotionally blackmail you. They'll say that these things that you do or don't do, you're doing it or not doing it because you don't love them. They will basically go out of their way and use everything but violence. And in some cases, they will resort to violence. But these are like the underlying motivations that a lot of men have unless they are actively working to deconstruct what the patriarchy has taught them about themselves and about women and about power dynamics in a relationship. And I also want you to notice how many of these reasons like center around this main character syndrome that I often talk about, where men always need to have everything revolving around them, otherwise they feel emasculated, or it's just simply centered around getting their own way at any expense. So like the first few reasons right away, it's get your way, respect, and she won't argue. Feeling superior, she's accountable to me. She's gonna be too scared to leave. So instead of making it an environment which she doesn't want to leave, they will make it an environment in which she is too scared to leave. It all comes down to strong arming somebody rather than loving somebody. And a lot of men will lean towards that rather than leaning on the side of love and understanding. This isn't just abusive men. For a lot of men, this is an ideal relationship. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Even though they may not abuse you physically, they will do these things. And the only thing stopping a lot of them is like getting in trouble. A lot of it centers around this idea of ultimate power. I decide, total control and decision making. Get the money, get sex, use money for drugs. Don't have to change for her. Control the children, intimidation. She has to be scared and she can't confront me. They're too cowardly and too scared to be confronted. Like if confrontation, like if you were really a big, strong man, confrontation wouldn't be a big deal to you. Confrontation would be an opportunity for you to learn and reflect. Instead, you're actually just a big ass coward and you want a woman to be too intimidated and too scared to confront your problematic behavior. And you'd rather convince her that she's screwing up than to stop acting in ways that are abusive. Accept my
A few notes. Men are definitely our own solar systems. We are not our own solar systems. We operate like we are suns in our own galaxies or in our own solar systems or whatever you want to say. Like every man has like a gravitational pull around him, and he has like children orbiting around him and women orbiting around him and maybe a few other men orbiting around him in some way, but mostly it's women and children. That is how men function, right? And every man is their own solar system. That's why it's a lot of times it's hard for men to get along because it's like, well, I got mine and you got yours, and and peace out or whatever the case may be. We don't ever like really make these strong bonds because you don't want to join your son with their son, right? I want my own son. I want my own solar system, right? Because the patriarchy has told me that I deserve my own solar system. I deserve my own group of people orbiting around me. Secondly, men know that when she was talking about men trying to manipulate women into like loving them or whatever the case may be, men know that they don't offer much. The average man knows that he doesn't offer much emotionally, right, as a human being, to get a woman to love him, right, to get a woman to fall in love with him and to keep her in love. We don't have the emotional depth that it takes to do that. And for the men that recognize that, those are the men who use the abuse the most, I feel like, in my mind. I really do, because they go, oh, I have nothing to offer this woman. But I want to keep her. And so this is how I'm going to keep her. I'm going to manipulate her. And lastly, what she was talking about, how men are like afraid of confrontation. That's when you hear that line about like women's tongues cut deep. Women's tongues cut so deep. Women's tongues cut so deep. Yeah, the truth hurts, right? Men don't like to get their shit clocked. That's all it is. Men don't like to get clocked, right? So when the women start to clock us, that's their tongues cutting too deep. All it is the truth, though. That's all it is, the truth. They see us for who we are. And we can't stand that. We are vampires in the sunlight. We are vampires in the sunlight because we are literally leeches and bloodsuckers of these women. And so when women are, their mouths are like the sun. They will beam down their lights, their bolts of truth on us, and we cannot take it. We go blind from it. And a gaslighting tactic is men telling women that their tongues cut deep. So much, we've gaslit women so much that I've heard even other women say that. Like, I heard a woman saying, this is one of my friends. She said though, since women can't hurt men physically the vast majority of the time, they will say things that they know will hurt that man and cut them deep. And I said, yeah, men do that every single argument though. Like, what are we talking about here? That's not a woman thing. Men do that way more than women. Men are constantly trying to belittle women and put women in their places and hurt them and cut them deeply all the time. And the majority of the stuff that the men are saying is a freaking lie. That's why they got to gaslight the women into making her think that she's crazy for not believing the lie that he's trying to tell her. But women will say stuff about us that'll be true. Don't let a woman get to cutting you deep with that truth and start telling you how unsatisfied she is in a bedroom, how much she doesn't like you as a person or whatever the case may be, how she can't stand you the majority of the time. That will cut deep. How she just stayed with you because of the kids. That's the type of stuff women will say to us, but it'll be 100% true and you will know it's the truth. And now you crying, sliding down the pink wall.
Decisions without an argument, right? Again, if your decisions were so good, they could be scrutinized. They would hold up in an argument. Women, please do talk about this in the comments. Like, how many of these things do you think that you've experienced in a relationship?
That was a very important part. I want to go back a little bit. This is really important.
Without an argument, right? Again, if your decisions were so good, they could be scrutinized. They would hold up in an argument. Women, please do talk about this in the comments. Like,
men do not... men, especially men who financially abuse, they withhold information from their significant others, right? And they make up excuses for withholding the information. They say stuff like, oh, I was just protecting her and so on and so forth. But the reason why you are withholding that information, that's not it. You don't want her to scrutinize your decisions. That's all it is. You're not protecting her. You did it for yourself. Men do that constantly, especially financial abusers. They will withhold information about like the women don't know what the money situation is. They got separate bank accounts, whatever the case may be. The women doesn't have access to the money, right? So the woman doesn't know how much debt they're in. They don't know, you know what I mean? Like, so whenever he does anything, she can't go, wait, why did you just buy a pair of shoes? Why did you just buy some clothes? Why did you just buy, like, you know what I'm saying? Why, like, wait, we don't need to be spending that money. Right. And then conversely, when she does stuff, they get to go, why are you doing that? Yada, yada, yada. And then when she goes, well, why can't I do that? And he gets to tell her, well, we don't have the money for it. But she don't know. You're not telling her what the money situation is. That's what it is. Telling her you got this grand plan, you got this grand scheme you're trying to execute. Oh, I want to buy a house in 2 years or 3 years or whatever. We're saving up to buy, like, whatever it is. But you're not really telling her how you're planning on actually achieving that goal. You're just telling her that's my goal. You're not actually breaking down how you're going to go about achieving the goal. You're just saying we're saving for that. And you use it conveniently when it benefits you.
How many of these things do you think that you've experienced in a relationship with a non-abusive man? As it turns out, they still want the benefits of a woman acting like she's abused.
All men are taught these tactics first and foremost, and the vast majority of men are abusive. I don't think she would argue with this. I think she was just being safe, but I'm going to say it for her. The vast majority of men are abusive, without a doubt. No question about it.
Like they still want the benefits of abuse, even in a non-abusive relationship. And they will act put out basically until you start to accept some of these things as normal. Like they'll shut down in arguments so that next time you will just accept their decisions without an argument. They may not physically drag you back into the house when you're getting ready to go out, but every time you go out, they start freaking out and like sending you like paragraphs, and all of a sudden they fell down and got hurt and you weren't there, and now you feel like scared to go out again. So that's still abuse. Even if it's not physical battering as they used to refer to it, that's still abuse. If you can't go out without your man like freaking out and like saying you don't care about him, saying you're probably out there cheating on him, fake injuries to get you to come home, things like that, that's still abusive because it's the same exact thing that abusive men do. These are both huge. She's an object and I get a robot, babysitter, maid, sex, food. We talk about this all the time, and here go men just admitting it. Again,
That's exact. Men want wife slaves. Men want wife slaves. Men want wife slaves. I have dozens of hours on wife slaves and how much men like desire wife slaves. And in this doctor who has psychoanalyzed these men, he's laying out that men just want wife slaves. But these men will come in my face and my space time and time again and try to gaslight me and tell me that that's not what men want. It's real. For me, this is a little validating. I'm not going to even hold you. It is. It really is. I'm not doing a victory lap because it's not about that. But it definitely, even though I know I'm right, gaslighting does have some effect on my mental. And sometimes I do have moments of like, am I right? Am I really telling? And then stuff like this comes along and I'm like, okay, now I'm back on y'all next, like tenfold. Like I'm really on y'all next. Y'all cannot gaslight me. Hell no.
It's cool that these abusive men admitted it, but just so you know, this is what's instilled in every man. This is why there are so many reasons. That's why this list is so long, because all of these things are accepted as normal in our society. If you ask a man to describe his perfect woman, this is what he's going to describe: an object, an ego booster, and a robot. She tells me I'm great, bragging rights. And notice how many of these things revolve around keeping you there against your will. Like they're willing to put in that kind of work, but they're not willing to put in the work that will make you want to stay in a relationship with them. Because it's not about that. It's about how much power they can exert any given day over a human being that they want to exert power over. And that other human being is rarely a man. It's most likely always going to be a woman.
Or a child. Or a child. Or a child. It's going to be a woman or a child. And in most cases, children are collateral damage. I mean, children get it all the time. Like they're the most out of men and women, out of women and children. Women are children are victimized way more than women are. Significantly more. I won't say way more, but significantly more than women are. Because mothers nor fathers see children as people yet. Most mothers and most fathers don't see children as people. They don't. Not wholly and not completely. Women humanize kids way more than men do, no doubt about it. But a lot of mothers still don't see children as human beings. Whereas and children have less protection than anybody. They have less protection than women and less protection than men.
Her money, get her to quit her job, and isolate her. And again, it just sort of, for the rest of the list, it goes back and forth between I do it to control her.
I'm sorry. And that's why feminism is so important to me, because that's why I will always love feminism, because it's not about women. Right? It's not about women. It's about humanity. It's about being a human. It's about men, women, and children, and everybody in between that fits in the gray areas. That's why I personally love feminism. That's why I love it. Because my kids get protected, my wife gets protected, and I get protected. What better ideology is there out there when it comes to these things? Women get protected, children get protected, and men get protected. Can't think of a better ideology.
And I also do it to get my way at any cost, at any expense, in any circumstance. I have the toys I want to take time for me. I want to decide how the money's spent. I don't actually want to cooperate. I don't actually want to have a discussion. I don't want to talk about these things. I just want what I want, and I want it when I want it, and I want to get it however I want to get it. Proves your superiority. Like, what superiority? Why are you in a relationship to prove your superiority? And again, as most women see and know from experience, this is not just limited to abusive men. A lot of men are in relationships to prove their superiority, whether it's to other men or whether it's to you as a woman. A lot of men cannot handle a superior woman. I'm not even talking about a woman that tells them that she's superior, but a woman who might be perceived by society as superior and as, you know, maybe not needing a man. A lot of men can't handle being with a woman like that. They'd rather be a woman where his superiority is never even questioned. Like, of course she would be with him. This convince column is some of the most disturbing. So they're literally admitting to crazy making behaviors, and they're literally admitting to trying to drive these women's self-esteem into the ground. There are lots of women who have been in non-physically abusive relationships where a man completely wore down their sense of self-esteem, their sense of attractiveness, their sense of right and wrong, and convinced them that she was the problem. Men are taught to get their way by any means, and they are surprisingly calculated in all of their attempts to get what they want.
The reason why men are so obsessed with this idea of having, like I said before, having our own solar systems in the way that we are is because men can't, we hate competition, right? And a reason why we hate competition is because of our entitlement. We feel like things should just come to us. And since we're so entitled, we end up not doing the work that it takes to be competitive, right? And we know we're not really competitive in the real world. We know we're not competitive on the open market. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Women, on the other hand, they know that to be competitive, they got to go above and beyond. They got to do like black people. We got to work twice as hard to get half as much, right? That's how women are, right? Even white women have to work twice as hard to get half as much as white men. See what I'm saying? They might not have to work twice as hard to get something over a black man, but the as far as the patriarchy is concerned, they definitely got to work twice as hard to get half the stuff that men get, right? And then sometimes they still don't get it, right? But just apply that to women in general. They have to work twice as hard to get half the stuff, to get half the respect, to get half the benefits that men get just for existing. So women get educated more, they listen more. Things that are very, very important when it comes to competing. Listening, very important to competition. Very important. And women listen far better than men do. And then they learn practical and effective ways of applying the things that they've learned. That's what women are doing every single day, and men are not. We're failing at that because of our entitlement.
And basically, again, there's just all this reference to you're just a whipping post, right? To a lot of men, they just want to have somebody to unload on, to bitch at, and to use as a whipping post. And a lot of men do this. Again, without hitting you, they will basically come home every day and like unload all of their stress, all of their frustration, bitch about all of these things, and then be like, "Where's dinner?" Or come.
Your woman is not your therapist. 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 Your woman is not your therapist.
To bed because I want to take it out on you sexually too. And they never bother to ask the woman about her day. They never bother to be a place where she can unload on, be a place that she can bitch at. No. A lot of it, of course, revolves around avoiding responsibility and avoiding consequences, like a coward. Of course, upon hearing all this, Chuck was like, well, duh, why would you give all this up? Why would you give all this up? This sounds.
The wildest thing is men, how men tell women everything, but then they don't want women to give them any feedback. It's not funny, but it is funny though. Like, we tell women everything, we dump everything on them. We don't tell them everything, but we dump all of our stuff on the women, and we don't want them to challenge us at all, not even a little bit. And then we get mad. And then we get mad when they bring up that stuff that we dumped on them. They get mad when they bring it up later. When women bring up, so like, if you're telling your wife stuff like troubles at your job or whatever the case may be, and and she's clocking in, she's hearing, and she's like, that sounds like that was his fault. That sounds like that was his fault. That sounds like that was his fault, right? And then now something happens, right? Like now you're at a new job, right? And she's seeing the same trend, and then she gets upset and she brings up the stuff like you were just doing this at your old job, like knock it off. That is when men will be like, how dare you use something that I told you against me? You mean to make you better? you mean to help you to grow the F up? That's what men do constantly. That is what they confuse with throwing their vulnerabilities. Women throwing our vulnerabilities in our faces.
Like a coward. Of course, upon hearing all this, Chuck was like, well, duh, why would you give all this up? Why would you give all this up? This sounds like it gives you full control over your life and the lives of others. And the only reasons that they basically came up with to avoid doing these things was consequences. Not empathy towards the woman, not being like, because it's wrong, not being like, oh, because I want to be a better person. Nope. Just get arrested, divorce, get protection orders taken out against you. Adult kids don't invite you to their weddings, and you have to go to groups like this.
I've said this. I've done many lives on this. Men won't change unless there's consequences to our actions. Men won't change. Men won't change. Let me be specific. Boys, you can grow. You can groom, you can guide, whatever you want to say. You can help them become better human beings. Boys are good. They're malleable, they listen, so on and so forth. Men will not change without consequences, right? But the heart, I mean, and sadly, it's like I hate that one of the groups who have, like the most power to change men behaviors are women. So men basically abstaining from men altogether will definitely change men. But I don't want to put that on women. Right? It's not on them to do that. It's just going to be a natural consequence. So men not changing, men not evolving is pushing women away. Women are going to shut down, and the more women that shut down, the less access men will have to them. Men will eventually start to clock it and start to change. Cool. That's a natural consequence. You see what I'm saying? But like, I hate that. Like, I'm not going to be one of those people where I'm like, women, you need to just say no to every man and just run away from every man. Like, I'm not going to say that. I will say I completely understand women completely abstaining from men. 100%. And I support it. 4B, support it. I'm a 4B proponent. I love it. I think it's a great idea, right? For the most part. I know there's some turfy stuff going on in there, but the idea of it, I'm good. I'm completely on board with it.
So while they had all these reasons to perform abuse, their only reasons to not do it still only included them, still only centered around them as people and what that means for them as far as consequences. And so the only ones that they see as people in these situations are themselves. This is why men, like when you catch them cheating, they start screaming, crying, and throwing up. Not because they feel bad, not because they feel like they've been a terrible person, but because they want to avoid the consequences, as they have so far been successfully able to do. That's all.
Crying because you got caught.
They're just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. And Chuck said this is what actually made him change his mind about these kinds of groups. Because the only way to actually keep these women and children safe is to choose the criminal and civic family court response every time. Because otherwise, there are just too many benefits gained from this behavior. Please always remember that these behaviors are not just exclusive to abusive men. We live in a structure where so many things happen at women's expense, which is inherently abusive. And things like men's peace of mind, men's egos, and men's self-esteem exist, women, at your expense. Men need you to pump up their egos, to make them feel important, to not argue with them, not get in their way, so that they can maintain this facade of being a big, strong man in the patriarchy. They never use other men to practice this on, because other men in the patriarchy are sacred. Other men are a tool of defense against the dismantling of the system of the patriarchy.
Also, other men present high levels or high probabilities of violence if another man tries to do this to them. So it keeps the men in check in that way too.
Patriarchy. I will once again bring your attention back to when Chuck said they all looked at each other first. before admitting that there was any benefit to their violence, they all looked at each other first. That's bro code right there. And that's
Facts.
something that you don't have as a woman. So it's very important for you to know how to protect yourself and to know that these behaviors are indicative of something deeper, of violence, one way or another. This is all violence against you. Even if somebody is not punching you in the face, but they go out of their way to ruin girls' night every time you try to go. They try to gaslight you about your attractiveness. If they try to gaslight you and say like, "Oh, you're cheating on me. That's why you want to go out." If they try to isolate you, if they try to manipulate you, it's because there's benefit in it for them, in not improving, in not learning, in not reflecting, in not
Facts.
doing the inner work. Because
That's facts. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. She hit the nail on the head. She hit the nail on the head 100%. She hit the nail on the head 100%. Everything she said, everything that the doctor, that guy Chuck, the doctor, the psychologist, everything that they said is 100% true. So my synopsis is very few men will change without consequences being involved, if any. And so we need to definitely tell men, like I'm telling men that they're going to lose access to women completely if they don't change. That's one of my tools that I use to get men to change, right? I tell them that their kids are not going to like them. I tell them all of that stuff. So yeah, that's a part of it. And I'm also telling them how the patriarchy hurts them and things of that nature, because you always have to tie everything back to men, because men don't have much, if any, empathy as a group. You know what I'm saying? So it's really hard to get a man to want to do these things when they don't see like a benefit, or really, or even on the other side, a punishment in it. If they don't see like, well, I can just continue to do these things because who's going to stop me? If they see that, I'm saying, then they're not going to stop. So you have to, you know what I mean? Like you have to put up that, you have to remove that veil and show them like, nah, bro, if you continue to do that, this and this and this will happen. But but that's even a hard sell sometimes, because a lot of these dudes don't care. A lot of these guys only care about the short term or the immediate, and that kind of goes in all of this stuff, because they're just so short-sighted. They're so men are constantly seeking like instant gratification and getting those instant dopamine hits, right? So it's hard to sell them on like the long-term ramifications of their behaviors and actions. That's a problem. But no matter what, I'm gonna continue to try to do it. I hope each and every one of you will continue to try to do it. Men continue to grow, men continue to learn and listen to the women, and just and have some introspection and some self-awareness about yourself. And hopefully we could stop being so goddamn abusive at some point in time. Peace.